Chapter 1. The Confession. The crystal chandelier above cast rainbow fractals across the marble floor of the Metropolitan Museum's Grand Hall. But Celeste Whitmore barely noticed the beauty surrounding her. Her hands trembled as she clutched the auction, paddle marked 47. The weight of her family's legacy pressing down on her shoulders like a 1,000-pound sculpture lot. Jimenez, Water Lilies in Twilight. I estimated value 4.2 million. The auctioneer's voice boomed across the room filled with Manhattan's elite. Celeste's breath caught. This was it, the painting that could save everything. The Whitmore Gallery had been her family's pride for 3 generations, but mounting debts and her father's recent medical bills had pushed them to the brink of bankruptcy. If she could acquire this Monet for the gallery's upcoming exhibition, the publicity and sales could keep their doors open. But as bidding paddles shot up around the room like a forest of expensive intentions, Celeste realized she was drowning in waters far deeper than any lily. Pond. 4.5 million, called a woman in diamonds the size of marbles. 5 million, countered a silver-haired man who probably owned half of Fifth Avenue. Celeste raised her paddle with shaking fingers. 5.2 million. The number came out as barely more than a whisper, but somehow the auctioneer caught it. 5.5 million. The voice came from directly behind her, rich and confident as aged whiskey. Celeste felt the vibration of it through her entire body, and something about the speaker's presence made the fine hairs on her neck stand at attention. She turned slightly and found herself staring into the most intense pair of storm-gray eyes she'd ever seen. The man was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a perfectly tailored black tuxedo that probably cost more than her monthly rent. His dark hair was slightly tousled, as if he'd been running his fingers through it, and there was something almost predatory in the way he watched the bidding war unfold. This had to be Damien Ashworth, the tech billionaire whose art collection was legendary even among New York's cultural elite. Celeste had read about him in art journals, the boy genius who'd built a tech empire by age 30 and now spent his fortune acquiring masterpieces. But seeing him in person was entirely different. He radiated a kind of controlled power that made her feel like a sparrow facing down a hawk. 6 million, she managed, her voice stronger now despite her racing heart. Those gray eyes fixed on her with laser focus, and she felt exposed, as if he could see straight through to her desperation. 6.5 million, he said calmly, never breaking eye contact. The other bidders had fallen silent, sensing they were witnessing something more personal than a simple auction. Celeste felt heat rise in her cheeks as she realized the entire room was watching their private duel. 7 million. The words left her lips before she could stop them, and she immediately felt sick. She didn't have 7 million. She barely had 700,000 approved by the bank. Damien's expression shifted slightly, something that might have been curiosity or amusement flickering across his features. 7.5 million, he said, but his tone was gentler now, almost apologetic. Celeste's paddle felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. She couldn't go higher. She'd already committed to more than she could afford, and if she won, the gallery would be ruined anyway by the debt. But if she stopped now, her father's life's work would be lost forever. The auctioneer was looking at her expectantly. Do I hear 8 million? The silence stretched like a taut wire. Celeste felt tears threatening at the corners of her eyes. She'd failed. Again. Just like when she'd failed to save her mother from cancer, failed to prevent her father's heart attack, failed to modernize the gallery quickly enough to compete with the bigger institutions. Sold to bidder 73 for $7.5 million, the auctioneer announced, and Celeste's world crumbled. She stood abruptly, mumbling apologies as she pushed past expensive gowns and Italian leather shoes toward the exit. The cool marble of the corridor felt like ice against her flushed cheeks as she tried to compose herself. Excuse me. That voice again, like velvet over steel. Celeste closed her eyes briefly, gathering her courage before turning to face Damien Ashworth. Up close, he was even more overwhelming. Tall enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his gaze, with features that belonged on a Renaissance statue rather than a modern billionaire. But it was his eyes that held her captive, intelligent, intense, and surprisingly warm. "I'm sorry," he said, and the genuine regret in his voice caught her off guard. "I didn't realize. Are you all right?" "I'm fine," Celeste lied, then immediately felt ridiculous. Of course she wasn't fine. She'd just publicly humiliated herself in front of New York's art world elite, and her family's gallery was still careening toward bankruptcy. "You're Celeste Whitmore," he said, and it wasn't a question. "From the Whitmore Gallery." She nodded, surprised he knew who she was. "I've heard wonderful things about your restoration work," he continued. "The way you brought back that damaged Degas last year was remarkable." Despite everything, she felt a flush of pride. "Thank you, though I'm not sure my reputation will help much now." The words slipped out before she could stop them, and she immediately regretted the show of weakness. "May I ask why that particular Monet was so important to you?" Celeste hesitated. Everything in her upbringing told her not to air her family's financial troubles to a stranger, especially one who'd just outbid her. But something in his expression, genuine concern rather than idle curiosity, made her want to trust him. "My family's gallery is in trouble," she admitted quietly. "My father had a heart attack 6 months ago, and the medical bills combined with other issues. We're facing bankruptcy. I thought if I could acquire something significant for our next exhibition, it might generate enough interest to..." She trailed off, realizing how naive it sounded. Damien was quiet for a long moment, studying her face with an intensity that made her stomach flutter. "What kind of exhibition were you planning?" "Hidden treasures," she said, featuring recovered and restored works that had been lost or damaged. "It was going to be our specialty, bringing forgotten masterpieces back to life." Something shifted in his expression, a spark of what looked like inspiration. "That sounds fascinating. Have you considered featuring contemporary collectors who specialize in restoration projects?" Celeste blinked, not following his logic. "What do you mean?" "I mean," he said, stepping closer, "what if you didn't need to own the Monet to display it?" Her heart began to race for an entirely different reason. "You'd loan it to us?" "I'd consider it. Under the right circumstances." "What circumstances?" she asked, though she was almost afraid to hear the answer. Damien smiled, and the transformation was devastating. Gone was the intimidating billionaire, replaced by someone warm and charming and impossibly attractive. "Well, there's a problem. I have a confession to make." Celeste waited, hardly daring to breathe. "I've never done this before. Worked directly with a small gallery on an exhibition. I usually deal with major museums and international institutions." His smile widened. "I'd need someone to guide me through the process. Someone who understands both the art and the intimate setting of a gallery like yours. You want me to help you?" Celeste could hardly believe what she was hearing. "I want you to be my partner in this," he said. "Temporary, of course, just for the exhibition. But I have a feeling you could teach me things about art that I've never learned from boardrooms and auction houses." Celeste stared at him, her mind reeling. This was insane. Damien Ashworth was offering her exactly what she needed, access to incredible art and the kind of publicity that came with his name attached to a project. But working closely with him? "I have to warn you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've never done this either. Worked with someone like you, I mean. I spend most of my time alone with paintings and books. I'm not good with people." The confession hung between them like a bridge she'd just built, but was afraid to cross. Damien's eyes softened, and he took another step closer. "Then we'll figure it out together," he said. "I have a feeling this collaboration is going to be magical." Celeste felt something shift inside her chest, like a door opening onto a room she'd never known existed. For the first time in months, maybe years, she felt hope. "Where do we start?" she asked. His smile was answer enough. Chapter 2. The Gallery, 3 days later. Celeste stood in the center of the Whitmore Gallery, watching Damien Ashworth examine every inch of the space with the focused intensity of a general surveying a battlefield. He'd arrived precisely at 9 o'clock, despite her warning that the gallery didn't officially open until 10, carrying 2 cups of coffee and wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her car. "This lighting is incredible," he said, tilting his head to study how the morning sun streamed through the tall windows, casting geometric patterns across the hardwood floors. "Natural illumination is so much more honest than anything artificial." Celeste felt a warm glow of pride. The lighting had been her idea, replacing the harsh fluorescence her father preferred with a system that maximized the gallery's natural advantages. Light changes everything about how we see art, she said. The same painting can look completely different at different times of day. Show me, Damien said, and there was something in his voice that made her pulse quicken. She led him to a small impressionist landscape hanging near the east window. Watch this, she said, pulling out her phone to check the time. In about 10 minutes, when the sun hits that building across the street, the reflected light will change the entire mood of this piece. They stood side by side, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something subtle and expensive that made her think of cedar and rain. Celeste found herself hyper-aware of everything about him. The way he stood with perfect posture, the slight crease between his brows when he concentrated, the fact that he was several inches taller than she'd initially thought. There, she breathed as the light shifted. The painting seemed to come alive, colors deepening and shadows dancing. Remarkable, Damien murmured, but when Celeste glanced at him, he was looking at her instead of the painting. Heat flooded her cheeks. I should show you the rest of the space. The Whitmore Gallery wasn't large, just 3 main rooms plus her father's office and a small restoration workshop in the back. But every inch had been carefully designed to showcase art at its best. Celeste had spent years perfecting the flow from room to room, creating sightlines and transitions that would guide visitors through an emotional journey. Your father built something beautiful here, Damien said as they entered the main exhibition hall. He built something important, Celeste corrected. Beauty was just a side effect. Damien turned to study her with that same intense focus he'd given the paintings. What's the difference? The question caught her off guard. Most people saw beauty and importance as the same thing when it came to art. Beauty fades, she said slowly. Trends change, tastes evolve. But importance, that's about connection, about preserving something that matters to the human experience. And that's what you do here? Preserve connections? Celeste nodded toward a small painting hanging in an alcove. A simple portrait of a woman reading, painted by an artist whose name history had forgotten. That painting came to us damaged beyond what most people would consider worth saving. A water stain covered half the woman's face, and the canvas was torn in 3 places. She moved closer to the portrait, remembering the hundreds of hours she'd spent working on it. But when I was cleaning the surface, I found something, a signature hidden under layers of varnish. Not the artist's signature, a name carved into the wet paint. For my beloved Marie. Damien joined her in front of the painting. The subject? His wife, probably. And suddenly, this wasn't just a painting anymore. It was a love letter, a message that survived everything, war, neglect, damage, for over 200 years. Celeste's voice softened. That's what we preserve here. Not just art, but the stories, the connections between people separated by time. She realized she'd been talking for several minutes without feeling self-conscious, which was remarkable in itself. Usually she stumbled over her words around strangers, especially attractive ones. But something about Damien's attention made her feel heard, rather than judged. That's what I want to capture in our exhibition, she continued. Not just restored art, but restored stories. Pieces that were lost and found, damaged and healed. Our exhibition? Damien repeated, and she felt a flutter of nervous excitement. If you're still interested, she said quickly. I know working with a small gallery isn't exactly Celeste. The way he said her name stopped her mid-sentence. I've been thinking about this collaboration non-stop since Tuesday night. I want to do more than just loan you paintings. What do you mean? Damien pulled out his phone and showed her a series of photos. I've been doing some research on pieces in my collection that might work for your theme, but I also want to fund the entire exhibition. Marketing, insurance, catalog production, opening night event, everything. Celeste stared at the phone screen, hardly believing what she was seeing. Paintings she'd only dreamed of viewing in person, each one a perfect fit for her vision. This is too much. I can't accept. You can and you will, Damien said firmly. Because this isn't charity, Celeste. This is business. I believe this exhibition will be something special, and I want to be part of creating it. She looked up at him, searching his face for any sign that this was some kind of elaborate pity project. But his expression was entirely serious, focused, almost hungry in a way that made her stomach flip. "Why?" she asked. "Really, why are you doing this?" Damien was quiet for a long moment, looking around the gallery as if seeing it for the first time. "Do you know what my penthouse apartment looks like?" The change of subject confused her. No? 15,000 square feet of marble and steel and floor-to-ceiling windows with a view of half of Manhattan. It was photographed for Architectural Digest last year. They called it a masterpiece of modern minimalism. "It sounds beautiful. It's a museum," Damien said, and there was something almost bitter in his voice. "Everything perfectly placed, climate-controlled, protected behind glass and security systems. I own some of the world's most important art, and it might as well be stored in a vault for all the connection I feel to it." He turned to face her fully. "But standing here, listening to you talk about that portrait, watching you light up when you describe why a painting matters, this is what I've been missing. This is what I want to learn from you." The intensity of his gaze made Celeste feel exposed and thrilled at the same time. "What exactly are you asking me to teach you?" "How to see art the way you do," he said simply. "How to find the stories, how to make it personal instead of just another acquisition." Before Celeste could respond, the gallery's front door chimed, and Emma's cheerful voice called out, "Celeste, are you here? I brought the insurance papers you wanted to review." "Back here," Celeste called, surprised by how breathless she sounded. Emma appeared in the doorway, an energetic redhead in her 20s who handled the gallery's administrative work with cheerful efficiency. She stopped short when she saw Damien, her eyes widening in recognition. "Oh my God," she whispered. "You're Damien Ashworth." "Guilty as charged," Damien said with an easy smile. "Mr. Ashworth is going to be collaborating with us on the Hidden Treasures exhibition," Celeste explained, proud that her voice sounded professional. "That's incredible," Emma gushed. "This is going to save the gallery, isn't it?" The blunt question made Celeste wince, but Damien answered smoothly. "I certainly hope so. Celeste has vision for something truly special." "When do we start?" Emma asked, practically bouncing with excitement. Celeste looked at Damien, feeling the weight of possibility settling around them like destiny. "We need to visit your collection first. See what pieces might work for the theme." "My penthouse is available this afternoon," Damien said, "unless you have other plans." She didn't, and they both knew it. But accepting his invitation felt like stepping off a cliff into unknown territory. "This afternoon is fine," she heard herself saying. Damien's smile was full of promise. "I'll send my driver at 2:00. And Celeste, yes? Wear something comfortable. I have a feeling we're going to be there for a while." Chapter 3. The collection Damien's penthouse occupied the entire top floor of a gleaming tower overlooking Central Park, and stepping off the private elevator felt like entering another world entirely. Celeste had expected opulence, but what she found was something far more complex. A space that was undeniably beautiful, yet somehow hollow, like a perfect shell with no soul inside. "Welcome to my museum," Damien said, his tone carrying that same bitter edge she'd heard earlier. Floor-to-ceiling windows wrapped around 3 sides of the main living area, offering breathtaking views of Manhattan's skyline. But it was the art that made Celeste's breath catch. Paintings she'd only seen in textbooks lined the walls. A small Picasso, 2 stunning Rothkos, what looked like an original Van Gogh sketch. Each piece was perfectly lit, perfectly positioned, perfectly isolated. "This is incredible," she whispered, moving toward the nearest painting, a luminous landscape that seemed to glow with inner light. "Is it?" Damien asked, following her gaze. "Sometimes I feel like I'm living in a very expensive mausoleum." Celeste turned to study his profile as he looked at his own collection. There was something almost sad in his expression, a longing she recognized from her own relationship with art. "Tell me about this one," she said, gesturing to the landscape. "Acquired it at Sotheby's 3 years ago. The dealer said it was a good investment. 15th century, attribution disputed but probably authentic." He recited the facts like reading from a catalog. "That's not what I meant," Celeste said gently. Tell me what you see when you look at it." Damien was quiet for a long moment, his brow furrowed in concentration. Honestly, I'm not sure I know how to answer that." "Then let's figure it out together." Celeste moved closer to the painting, close enough to see the individual brushstrokes. "What's the first thing that strikes you? Not the provenance or the value, just your immediate reaction." Damien joined her, so close their shoulders almost touched. Celeste tried to ignore the way her skin tingled at his proximity and focus on the art. "The light," he said finally. "It's warm, like late afternoon in summer." "Good," Celeste encouraged. "What else?" "There's a figure in the distance. A woman, I think, walking along that path." His voice grew more confident. "She's small in the composition, but somehow she draws the eye." "Why do you think that is?" Damien leaned closer to the painting, and Celeste caught another hint of his cologne. "Because she's moving toward something we can't see. The path curves behind those trees, and there's a sense of anticipation, like she's going home, or to meet someone important." "Exactly." Celeste felt a flush of excitement at his insight. "You just connected with a story that's 500 years old. You felt what the artist wanted you to feel." When Damien turned to look at her, his expression was almost wondering. "Is that what you do? Find the stories?" "The stories are already there," Celeste said. "I just help people see them." They moved through the penthouse slowly, stopping at each piece while Celeste guided Damien through the process of looking beyond the surface. She watched him transform from collector to observer to participant, and something inside her chest grew warm and tight at each small breakthrough. "This Monet," he said when they reached a water lily painting near the windows. "It's not just about the subject, is it? It's about memory." "What makes you say that?" "The way the edges blur together. Like trying to remember a perfect summer day. You can feel the warmth and see the colors, but the details fade." He paused, looking almost surprised at himself. "I sound ridiculous. You sound like someone who's learning to see," Celeste said, and meant it. They'd been at it for 2 hours, and Celeste had filled several pages of her notebook with pieces that could work for the exhibition. But more importantly, she'd watched Damien discover something she wasn't sure he'd known was missing from his life. "I want to show you something," he said, as they finished examining a delicate watercolor. "It's not part of the main collection." He led her down a hallway she hadn't seen before, past what looked like guest bedrooms and a library, to a door at the far end. When he opened it, Celeste gasped. The room was clearly his private office, but the walls were covered with photographs, hundreds of them in frames of every size and style. Not family photos or professional portraits, but candid shots of people, children playing in parks, elderly couples holding hands, street musicians performing, workers laughing during lunch breaks. "You took these?" Celeste asked, moving closer to examine the images. "Photography was my first love," Damien said, and for the first time since she'd met him, he sounded almost shy. "Before the tech company, before the billions, before I became this, I wanted to be a documentary photographer. The photos were beautiful, intimate glimpses of human connection captured with an artist's eye. Celeste could see the same sensitivity in them that he'd just discovered while looking at paintings. "These are incredible, Damien." "Why did you stop?" His expression darkened. "Because documentary photography doesn't make the kind of money needed to support a family business on the verge of collapse. Because my father needed me to be practical, not artistic. Because dreams don't pay off debt or save companies from bankruptcy." The pain in his voice made Celeste's chest ache. "How old were you when you gave this up?" 22. Fresh out of college, with a business degree I never wanted, and a camera I never used again." He gestured toward the photos. "I developed these from old film I found a few months ago. Some kind of nostalgia attack." "They're not nostalgia," Celeste said firmly. "They're proof that you see beauty and connection even when you think you've forgotten how." Damien looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Is that your professional opinion, Dr. Whitmore?" The teasing tone made her smile. "Actually, I think they should be part of the exhibition." "What?" "Hidden treasures," Celeste said, her excitement building. "Lost and found. These photographs were lost for over a decade and now they're found. They tell stories of human connection just like the paintings do. I couldn't..." You could, and you should. Celeste turned to face him fully. Don't you see? This exhibition isn't just about restored art. It's about restored dreams, restored connections, restored pieces of ourselves we thought were gone forever. Something shifted in Damien's expression. A heat that had nothing to do with artistic passion. You're extraordinary, you know that? The compliment hit her like a physical blow, making her cheeks burn. I'm really not. You are. He stepped closer, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. You see things other people miss. You find magic in damaged paintings and beauty in forgotten photographs. You make me remember parts of myself I thought I'd lost. Celeste's heart was racing so fast she was sure he could hear it. Damien, I have another confession, he said, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. What? She breathed. I've been thinking about you since Tuesday night. Not just about the collaboration. Not just about the exhibition. About you. The way you talk about art like it's alive. The way you light up when you discover something beautiful. The way you make me want to be someone who deserves to see the world through your eyes. Celeste felt like she was drowning in the intensity of his gaze. I'm not good at this, at whatever this is. Neither am I, Damien admitted. I'm good at business deals and board meetings and acquiring things. But this, what I feel when I'm with you, I've never done this before either. The echo of her words from the museum made her smile despite her nervousness. What exactly are we doing? I don't know, he said honestly. But I want to find out. With you. When he kissed her, it was gentle at first. Tentative. Giving her every opportunity to pull away. But instead, Celeste found herself melting into him, her hands fisting in the fabric of his shirt as he deepened the kiss. This was nothing like the few kisses she'd experienced before. This was consuming, overwhelming, perfect in a way that made her understand why people wrote poetry about love. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Celeste felt like she'd been fundamentally changed. Wow, she breathed. Yeah, Damien agreed, his forehead resting against hers. Wow. Chapter 4. The Secret. The call came at midnight, 3 days after their first kiss. Celeste jolted awake in her small apartment, heart racing as she fumbled for her phone in the darkness. The caller ID showed a number she didn't recognize, but something told her to answer. Hello? She whispered, glancing at the clock. Ms. Whitmore? The voice was crisp, professional, unfamiliar. This is Jonathan Sterling, Victoria Sterling's assistant. Ms. Sterling would like to meet with you tomorrow morning. 9 a.m. at the Plaza Hotel's Palm Court. Celeste's blood went cold. Victoria Sterling. Even someone as removed from high society as Celeste knew that name. Old money, real estate empire, Manhattan royalty. But why would Victoria Sterling want to meet with her? I'm sorry, but I think you have the wrong... She knows about your relationship with Damien Ashworth, the assistant continued smoothly. She thought you might want to discuss the situation before it becomes public. The line went dead, leaving Celeste staring at her phone in the darkness, her mind racing. Victoria Sterling knew about her and Damien, but how? They'd been so careful, so private. Their only public interaction had been at the auction, and that had seemed completely professional, unless Damien had told her. The thought hit Celeste like a punch to the stomach. Was Damien involved with Victoria Sterling? Was that why she knew about their relationship? The possibilities spiraled through her mind, each worse than the last. She spent the rest of the night staring at the ceiling, replaying every conversation, every touch, every moment with Damien, searching for clues she might have missed. By morning, she'd convinced herself that she was walking into some kind of trap, but she couldn't ignore the meeting. She had to know what Victoria Sterling wanted, and what she knew. The Plaza Hotel's Palm Court was everything Celeste had imagined old money Manhattan to be. Crystal chandeliers, marble columns, and an atmosphere of quiet elegance that made her feel underdressed despite wearing her best blazer. She spotted Victoria immediately, a tall, blonde woman in her early 30s who radiated the kind of effortless sophistication that came from generations of privilege. Celeste, Victoria said, rising gracefully from her table. Thank you for coming. Please sit. Up close, Victoria was even more intimidating. beautiful in the way that graced magazine covers, with perfect posture and an air of absolute confidence. Everything about her screamed, "This is what a billionaire's girlfriend should look like." "I'm not sure why I'm here," Celeste said carefully, settling into the chair across from her. "Of course you are," Victoria replied with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You're here because you're sleeping with my fiancé." The words hit Celeste like a physical blow. "Your fiancé? Damien and I have been engaged for 6 months," Victoria said matter-of-factly, pulling out her phone to show Celeste a photo. "Though we've kept it relatively private while we handle some business arrangements. I assume he didn't mention it." The photo showed Damien and Victoria at some charity gala, his arm around her waist, both of them smiling at the camera. They looked perfect together, like they'd stepped off the pages of Town and Country. Celeste felt the world tilt sideways. Engaged. Damien was engaged to Victoria Sterling, and he'd never mentioned it. Not once, in all their conversations about art and life and the future. Not even when he'd kissed her. No, she managed. "He didn't mention it." "I thought not," Victoria said with false sympathy. "Men like Damien have a tendency to compartmentalize. Business in one box, pleasure in another. I'm sure he told you exactly what you wanted to hear." "Why are you telling me this?" Celeste asked, though she was afraid she already knew. "Because I like you," Victoria said, and somehow made it sound like an insult. "You're smart, talented, hardworking, all admirable qualities. And I think you deserve better than being someone's temporary distraction." Temporary distraction. "Oh, darling." Victoria's voice was honey over poison. "Surely you don't think this is serious? A billionaire tech mogul and a small gallery owner? It's very Pretty Woman, but this isn't a movie." Each word was precisely calculated to wound, and they hit their mark perfectly. Celeste felt every insecurity she'd ever had about her relationship with Damien come flooding back. She was nobody compared to him. She did come from a different world. What had she been thinking? "The wedding is in the spring," Victoria continued. "A small ceremony, just family and close friends. But of course, there are business considerations that make our union particularly beneficial. Mergers, acquisitions, the kind of strategic partnerships that someone in your position might not understand." "Strategic partnerships," Celeste repeated dully. "Exactly. Which is why I hope you can understand that whatever little fling you and Damien are having needs to end, for everyone's sake." Victoria leaned forward slightly, her expression becoming almost maternal. "I'm not angry, Celeste. I understand the appeal of a man like Damien, the power, the wealth, the attention. And I'm sure he's been very generous with his time and resources. But surely you can see that this can't last, can it?" Celeste found her voice, though it came out smaller than she'd intended. "Men like Damien don't marry women like you," Victoria said with devastating gentleness. "They marry women like me. Women who can enhance their social standing, who understand their world, who can be assets to their careers rather than complications." The word hung in the air between them like a sword. "I want you to stay away from him," Victoria continued. "End the exhibition project, decline his calls, remove yourself from his life. In return, I'll make sure the transition is comfortable for you." She slid a check across the table. Celeste's eyes widened when she saw the amount, enough to save the gallery, pay her father's medical bills, and secure her future for years to come. "Consider it a consulting fee," Victoria said smoothly. "For the work you've already done." Celeste stared at the check, her mind reeling. This was everything she needed, everything she'd been fighting for. Financial security, her father's legacy preserved, her own future assured. All she had to do was walk away from Damien and pretend the past week had never happened. "He doesn't love you," Victoria added quietly. "Men like Damien don't fall in love with women like you. They collect you, enjoy you for a while, then move on to the next interesting acquisition. You're just another piece for his collection." The words cut deep, because they echoed every fear Celeste had been harboring since their first meeting. Was that all she was to him? Another object to acquire and display? "I need time to think," Celeste managed. "Of course," Victoria said graciously. "But don't take too long. I'd hate for this situation to become messy." As Celeste stood to leave, Victoria caught her wrist gently. "For what it's worth, I do think you're talented. Your restoration work is quite impressive. Perhaps after all this is settled, we could discuss some opportunities. I know several collectors who might be interested in your services. The offer was clear. Take the money, disappear from Damien's life, and Victoria would ensure her career thrived. Refuse and face the consequences of crossing one of New York's most powerful women. Celeste walked out of the plaza in a daze, Victoria's words echoing in her head. Engaged. Damien was engaged to someone else, and he'd never told her. Every moment between them, every confession, every kiss, all of it had happened while he was committed to another woman. She found herself walking aimlessly through Central Park, Victoria's check burning a hole in her purse. The rational part of her brain said to take the money and run. She found herself walking aimlessly through Central Park, Victoria's check burning a hole in her purse. The rational part of her brain said to take the money and run. Victoria was right. Men like Damien didn't end up with women like her. This was all some elaborate fantasy that was bound to end badly. But another part of her, a part that was growing stronger by the minute, rebelled against Victoria's certainty. The Damien she'd gotten to know wasn't the cold businessman Victoria described. He was vulnerable, searching, genuinely moved by art and beauty. When he looked at her, she felt seen in a way she'd never experienced before, unless that was all an act. Unless Victoria was right, and she was just another acquisition. Her phone buzzed with a text from Damien. Missing you. Dinner tonight? I have something important to tell you. Something important. Was he finally going to tell her about Victoria? About the engagement? Or was he planning to end things before she could confront him? She stared at the message for a long time before typing back. Can't tonight. Rain check? His response was immediate. Everything okay? You sound different, just tired. Talk tomorrow, Celeste. If something's wrong. She turned off her phone before he could finish the message. She needed time to think, to process what Victoria had told her, to figure out what she wanted to do next. But first, she needed to know if Victoria was telling the truth. Chapter 5. The investigation Celeste spent the next morning doing something she'd avoided since meeting Damien, researching his personal life online. She deliberately stayed away from gossip sites and society pages, preferring to learn about him directly rather than through tabloid speculation, but now she needed facts. It didn't take long to find what she was looking for. The engagement announcement was right there in the New York Times from 6 months ago, complete with a photo of Damien and Victoria at some charity gala. They looked perfect together. He in a classic tuxedo, she in a designer gown that probably cost more than Celeste's annual rent. Damien Ashworth, founder and CEO of Ashworth Technologies, announced his engagement to Victoria Sterling, daughter of real estate mogul Harrison Sterling. The couple plans to wed next spring in what promises to be one of the year's most anticipated society events. Celeste stared at the photo until her eyes burned. There was no denying it. Victoria had been telling the truth. Damien was engaged and apparently had been for months, which meant that everything between them, every moment of connection and intimacy, had been happening while he was committed to someone else. She closed her laptop and buried her face in her hands. How could she have been so naive? How could she have believed that someone like Damien would be genuinely interested in someone like her when he had Victoria Sterling, beautiful, sophisticated, perfectly suited to his world? Her phone rang, and she saw Emma's name on the screen. Please tell me you're not moping in your apartment, Emma said without preamble. I'm not moping, Celeste lied. Right, that's why you sound like someone killed your dog. What happened? Celeste found herself telling Emma everything. Victoria's meeting, the engagement announcement, the check that was still sitting on her kitchen counter. Emma listened in increasingly outraged silence. That manipulative bitch, Emma exploded when Celeste finished. She's trying to buy you off. Maybe she's right, though, Celeste said quietly. Maybe I'm just a temporary distraction. Maybe men like Damien really don't end up with women like me. Stop, Emma said firmly. Just stop. I've seen the way he looks at you, Celeste. That's not fake. That's not some rich guy playing games. That's a man who's completely gone for you. Then why didn't he tell me about Victoria? I don't know, Emma admitted. But don't you think you owe it to yourself and to him to ask? What if I don't like the answer? Then at least you'll know the truth. But Celeste, if you walk away now without giving him a chance to explain, you'll regret it for the rest of your life. After Emma hung up, Celeste sat staring at Victoria's check. The amount was life-changing, security-providing, everything she'd been working toward. All she had to do was cash it and disappear from Damien's life. But Emma was right about one thing. She deserved to know the truth. And if Damien was the kind of man who would lie to her, who would pursue her while engaged to someone else, then she needed to hear it from him directly. Her phone buzzed with another text from Damien. "I'm worried about you. Can we please talk?" This time, she responded, "Come to the gallery at 7. We need to have a conversation. On my way. Damien, bring honesty." The 3 dots appeared and disappeared several times before his response came through. Always. Chapter 6. The confrontation. Damien arrived at the Whitmore Gallery 20 minutes early, looking like he'd been running his hands through his hair. He was wearing jeans and a simple button-down shirt, more casual than she'd ever seen him, and somehow more vulnerable because of it. "Celeste," he said the moment he walked through the door. "What's wrong? You've been avoiding me for 2 days." She took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was about to be either the most painful or most clarifying conversation of her life. "I met with Victoria Sterling yesterday." The effect was immediate and devastating. Damien went completely pale, then flushed with what looked like panic and shame in equal measure. "Victoria came to see you?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "She wanted to discuss our relationship," Celeste continued, keeping her voice steady despite the way her heart was racing. "She was very informative." Damien closed his eyes and ran both hands through his hair. "Celeste, I can explain. Can you?" The pain she'd been holding back began to seep into her voice. "Can you explain why you kissed me while you're engaged to someone else? Can you explain why you made me feel like I was special when you're planning to marry another woman in the spring?" "I'm not marrying Victoria," Damien said desperately. "No?" "Because she seemed pretty confident about the wedding plans. She even showed me the engagement announcement in the Times." "The engagement is..." Damien struggled for words. "It's complicated." "Complicated," Celeste repeated flatly. "That's what married men always say when they're cheating." "I'm not cheating." The vehemence in his voice made her take a step back. "I've never cheated on anyone in my life. Victoria and I, what we have isn't. It's not real." "What do you mean not real?" "You proposed to her." "I was expected to propose to her," Damien corrected, beginning to pace. "By my father, by her father, by the boards of both companies. It was presented as the logical next step for 2 people who were compatible on paper and could benefit each other professionally." Celeste stared at him, trying to process what he was saying. "So you don't love her?" "I don't love her," he confirmed without hesitation. "I'm not sure I even like her most of the time. And she feels the same way about me. Our engagement is about business mergers and social expectations, not romance." "Then why haven't you ended it?" Damien's expression grew pained. "Because breaking it off would hurt both our companies. Because my father's been planning this union for years. Because until very recently, I didn't have a good enough reason to disappoint everyone and deal with the consequences." He stopped pacing and looked directly at her, his eyes intense and pleading. "Until I met you." "Damien, no," Celeste said quickly. "You can't break off your engagement because of me. I won't be responsible for..." "You're not responsible for anything," Damien interrupted, moving closer. "You didn't make me realize I was settling for a life without passion. You didn't make me remember what it feels like to want someone so much it keeps you awake at night. You didn't make me fall in love with you." The words hit Celeste like a thunderbolt. "You're not in love with me," she said weakly. "We barely know each other, don't I?" Damien stepped close enough to touch her. "I know that you talk to paintings while you work on them. I know that you see beauty and story and connection in things other people walk past without noticing. I know that you make me want to be a better man than I've ever been." Celeste felt tears threatening at the corners of her eyes. "It doesn't matter what we feel. You're engaged to someone else." "Not for much longer," Damien said firmly. "I'm calling off the engagement." "You can't do that because of me. I'm not doing it because of you," he said gently. "I'm doing it because of me. Because I refuse to spend my life in a loveless marriage just to satisfy other people's expectations. Because I deserve better than that. And so does Victoria. He reached up to cup her face in his hands, his touch gentle but certain. But I'll be honest, Celeste. Meeting you, falling for you, that gave me the courage to admit what I've known all along. That I was settling. That I was choosing the safe, expected path instead of taking the risk of going after what I really want. And what do you really want? She asked, though her heart was already racing with hope. You, he said simply. I want you. I want late nights talking about art and early mornings planning exhibitions. I want to learn to see the world through your eyes. I want to support your dreams and have you challenge mine. I want to take a chance on something real and magical and complicated and perfect. Celeste felt like she was standing at the edge of a cliff, with safety behind her and unknown possibilities ahead. Everything in her life had taught her to choose safety, to protect herself from disappointment and heartbreak. But looking into Damien's eyes, seeing the absolute sincerity there, she realized that some risks were worth taking. Victoria offered me money, she said quietly. A lot of money. Enough to save the gallery and secure my future. All I have to do is walk away from you. Damien's hands dropped from her face, and she saw something flicker in his expression. Hurt, but not surprise. What did you tell her? I told her I needed time to think. And? What have you decided? Celeste pulled Victoria's check from her pocket and looked at it one more time. At all that security, all that certainty, all that safety. Then she tore it in half. I've decided, she said, that some things are worth more than money. Damien's smile was radiant. Thank God, he breathed, then kissed her with a desperation and joy that made her feel like she was flying. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Celeste rested her forehead against his chest and listened to his racing heartbeat. This is going to be complicated, she said. The best things usually are, Damien replied, his arms tightening around her. Victoria's not going to take this well. Let me worry about Victoria, he said firmly. I'm ending the engagement this week, Celeste. I should have done it months ago. And the exhibition? Damien pulled back to look at her with surprise. What about it? Will you still want to collaborate with me after you've dealt with all the fallout from breaking your engagement? This is going to be a huge scandal in your world. Celeste, Damien interrupted, his voice gentle but firm. Do you think I would let anything stop me from working with you now? Do you think a little gossip could make me walk away from something this important? I don't know, she admitted. I've never been in this situation before. Neither have I, he said with a soft laugh. But I know this. Whatever happens with the business world, whatever the newspapers say, whatever my father and Victoria's father think, none of that matters as much as what we're building together. The exhibition or the relationship? Both, he said without hesitation. They're connected, aren't they? The art, the stories, the way we see the world. It's all part of the same thing. As he held her in the gallery surrounded by art and possibility, Celeste felt something tight and fearful in her chest begin to loosen. Maybe Victoria was wrong. Maybe love really could transcend social boundaries and business expectations. Maybe magic was real after all. Chapter 7. The fallout. The story broke 3 days later with all the subtlety of a nuclear explosion. Tech billionaire's engagement scandal screamed the headline across page 6, complete with a photo of Damien and Celeste leaving her gallery together. Damien Ashworth calls off high-profile engagement to Victoria, sterling amid rumors of secret romance with struggling gallery owner. Celeste stared at her laptop screen in horror, reading details that were far too accurate to have come from speculation. Someone close to the situation had talked, extensively. Her phone had been ringing non-stop since 6 a.m. with reporters, bloggers and gossip columnists, all wanting quotes about her relationship with Manhattan's most eligible bachelor. She'd stopped answering, after the 5th call asking if it was true that she'd seduced him away from his fiancée for financial. Emma burst through the door of her apartment carrying coffee and a stack of newspapers, her expression murderous. Have you seen the post? I've seen everything, Celeste said miserably. Twitter, Instagram, even the art blogs are covering it. It's all garbage, Emma said fiercely. dropping the papers on the coffee table. Anyone who knows you would never believe this crap about you being a gold-digging opportunist. But they don't know me, Celeste replied. To the rest of the world, I'm exactly what they're saying, a nobody who got lucky when a billionaire felt sorry for her. You're not a nobody, and Damien doesn't pity you, Emma said firmly. You saw how he looked at you when he broke the engagement. That man is head over heels in love. Celeste wanted to believe that, but it was hard to hold on to in the face of such overwhelming public scrutiny. The comment sections were particularly vicious, filled with strangers dissecting her background, her appearance, her worthiness to date someone like Damien. She's obviously after his money. Look at her, plain boring, nothing special. He'll get bored and dump her within a month. Gold digger alert! She probably planned this whole thing from the moment she saw him at that auction. Poor Victoria Sterling. Imagine losing your fiancé to some desperate gallery worker. Each comment was like a small knife, cutting away at her confidence and reinforcing every insecurity she'd ever had about their relationship. Maybe this was a mistake, she said quietly. Don't, Emma warned. Don't let them get in your head. Before Celeste could respond, her phone rang. Damien's name appeared on the screen, and after a moment's hesitation, she answered. Celeste, thank God. His voice was tight with stress and exhaustion. I've been trying to reach you all morning. I've been avoiding the phone, she admitted. It's been intense. I know, and I'm so sorry. I never expected the media response to be this brutal this quickly. His voice was heavy with guilt. Victoria's father owns stakes in half the gossip rags in the city, and they're not taking the broken engagement well. How bad is it for you? Celeste asked, genuinely concerned despite her own distress. Honestly, it's a mess. The board is meeting this afternoon to discuss reputation management. 3 major investors have called questioning my judgment. And my father... He paused, and she could hear the strain in his voice. Let's just say he's not pleased with my choices. Damien, maybe we should... No, he said firmly before she could finish. Whatever you're about to suggest, no. I'm not backing down, and I'm not letting them destroy you. But if it's hurting your business, I don't care about the business more than I care about you. Damien interrupted. Yes, it's messy right now, but that doesn't change how I feel about you. Despite everything, his words made her heart race with hope. The exhibition, she said suddenly, the practical implications finally hitting her. With all this scandal, no one will want to attend. It'll be a disaster. Actually, Damien said, and she could hear a smile in his voice. Early ticket sales suggest the opposite. Apparently scandal sells. We're already 70% sold out for opening night. People are buying tickets to gawk at us, Celeste realized with growing horror. Some of them probably, but you know what? I don't care why they come as long as they see your work. Once they're there, once they experience what you've created, the gossip won't matter. A knock at her apartment door interrupted their conversation. Emma went to answer it while Celeste continued talking to Damien about security arrangements and media management. Celeste? Emma's voice was strange, carefully neutral. You need to see this. Emma returned, carrying an enormous bouquet of white roses, at least 3 dozen, arranged with museum-quality precision. The card attached was simple. For Celeste. With respect and admiration. Eleanor Ashworth. Your mother sent these? Celeste asked into the phone. She what? Damien sounded surprised. My mother sent you flowers? White roses. A lot of them. There was silence on the other end of the line. Then what sounded like relief. She's showing support, Damien said. Mom only sends white roses to people she genuinely respects. And she never acts impulsively. If she sent those, it means she's thought about our relationship and decided to back us publicly. Why would she do that? Because she's probably the only member of my family who believes love should matter more than business arrangements, Damien said with obvious affection. And because she has excellent judgment when it comes to people. The flowers felt like a lifeline in the storm of public criticism. Eleanor Ashworth's support wouldn't stop the gossip, but it lent legitimacy to their relationship that even the harshest critics would have to acknowledge. I want to see you tonight, Damien said. I know it's risky with all the media attention, but I need to hold you and remind myself why all this chaos is worth it. Where? My apartment is surrounded by photographers, and your penthouse probably isn't much better. Leave that to me, he said. I'll send Marcus to pick you up at 8. Trust me? Always, she said, and meant it. After she hung up, Emma studied the roses with a thoughtful expression. You know what this means, right? That his mother has good taste in flowers? That you're not alone in this, Emma said firmly. Eleanor Ashworth doesn't send flowers lightly. If she's supporting you publicly, it means she thinks you're worth defending. Celeste looked at the roses, beautiful, elegant, and somehow reassuring in their simple perfection. Maybe Emma was right. Maybe she wasn't as alone in this as she felt. Now, Emma said with determination, let's pick out something amazing for you to wear tonight. If you're going to be the center of a media scandal, you might as well look incredible while doing it. Despite everything, Celeste laughed. The first genuine laugh she'd had since the story broke. You know what? You're right. If I'm going to be Manhattan's most notorious art restorer, I might as well embrace it. That's my girl, Emma said with a grin. Now about that blue dress. Chapter 8. The sanctuary Marcus, Damien's driver, was a master of discretion. He managed to extract Celeste from her apartment building through a service entrance, navigate through traffic using routes that avoided the main paparazzi stakeouts, and deliver her to what appeared to be a small, elegant brownstone on the Upper East Side without attracting any unwanted attention. Mr. Ashworth is waiting for you on the 3rd floor, Marcus said with a conspiratorial smile as he held the door open. Take the elevator to the top. The building was clearly expensive but understated, the kind of place that whispered wealth rather than shouting it. When the elevator doors opened on the 3rd floor, Celeste found herself in a stunning apartment that was nothing like Damien's penthouse. This space felt lived in, warm, personal. Welcome to my sanctuary, Damien said, appearing from what looked like a kitchen, carrying 2 glasses of wine. The apartment was smaller than his penthouse, but infinitely more comfortable. Books lined the walls, soft lighting created intimate pools of warmth, and there wasn't a single piece of museum-quality art in sight. Instead, the walls held what looked like personal photographs, sketches, and a few small paintings that were clearly chosen for emotional rather than monetary value. I didn't know you had another place, Celeste said, accepting the wine and looking around in wonder. I bought it when I started collecting seriously, Damien explained. Somewhere I could go to remember who I was before I became Damien Ashworth Billionaire art collector. It's the only place that feels like home. The apartment reflected a side of him she'd only glimpsed in moments. The man who'd given up photography to save his family's business. The person who saw beauty in human connection, rather than just acquisition value. Here, surrounded by books and comfortable furniture and the smell of something delicious cooking in the kitchen, she could see the man he might have been if circumstances had been different. You cooked? She asked, following the scent toward the kitchen. I ordered from the Italian place downstairs, Damien admitted with a sheepish smile. But I set the table myself, so that counts for something. The small dining area had been transformed into something magical. Candles. Flowers, not white roses, she noted with amusement, but simple daisies that looked like they'd come from a corner market. And place settings that were elegant without being intimidating. This is perfect, Celeste said, and meant it. During dinner, they carefully avoided discussing the media circus, focusing instead on plans for the exhibition. Celeste showed him her latest ideas for the catalog layout, and Damien shared his thoughts on the opening night event. For a few hours, they managed to create a bubble of normalcy in the chaos of their suddenly public relationship. I have something to show you, Damien said as they finished dessert. He led her to a small room off the main living area that had been converted into a study. Unlike his sterile office at the penthouse, this space was clearly where he did his real thinking. The desk was covered with papers, books, and what looked like architectural sketches. What is this? Celeste asked, examining the drawings. Plans for a new kind of art space, Damien said, moving to stand beside her. Part gallery, part community center, part educational facility. Somewhere that makes art accessible to people who might never set foot in a traditional museum. The sketches were detailed, thoughtful, clearly the product of months of planning. Celeste could see spaces for exhibitions, workshops, restoration demonstrations, even a small theater for lectures and performances. "This is incredible," she breathed. "When did you start planning this?" "The night we met," Damien admitted. "Listening to you talk about art as connection rather than commodity. It made me realize I wanted to be part of something more meaningful than just acquiring pretty objects for my penthouse." He pointed to one section of the drawings. "This would be the restoration workshop, open to the public, so people could watch masters like you bring damaged pieces back to life. I thought maybe you'd consider running it." Celeste stared at the sketches, hardly believing what she was seeing. "You want me to run this?" "I want us to run it," Damien corrected. "Together. A partnership that goes beyond just this exhibition." The offer was everything she'd ever dreamed of. A chance to share her passion with the world, unlimited resources, the opportunity to teach and inspire others. But it was also terrifying in its scope and ambition. "Damien, this would cost millions to build. After all the scandal, after breaking your engagement, would your board even approve something like this?" "The board doesn't get to decide how I spend my personal fortune," Damien said with a smile. "And this project is important to me, more important than their approval or public opinion or anything else." "Why?" Celeste asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. "Because you taught me that the best art isn't about what we own, it's about what we share. Because I want to spend my life creating something meaningful with the woman I love. Because I'm tired of living in a museum when I could be helping to build a community." When he said the word love, Celeste felt her heart stop and restart. They'd been dancing around the word for weeks, both of them feeling it but neither quite ready to make it real with language. "You love me," she said, and it wasn't a question. "I love you," Damien confirmed without hesitation. "I love your passion for art, your dedication to preserving beauty, your ability to see connection where others see only objects. I love the way you make me want to be better, more generous, more authentic." He moved closer, cupping her face in his hands. "I love you, Celeste Whitmore, and I don't care who knows it or what they think about it." "I love you too," she whispered, the words feeling like magic on her tongue. When he kissed her this time, it was different from their other kisses. This wasn't exploration or desperation or even passion. This was recognition, acknowledgement, the sealing of something that had been building between them since their first meeting. "Stay tonight," Damien said when they broke apart. "I know the media situation is complicated, but I need you here, with me, in the one place that feels real." Celeste looked around the apartment that was so different from the sterile perfection of his penthouse, at the architectural plans that represented their shared future, at the man who had chosen love over convenience, and her over the approval of his social circle. "Yes," she said simply. That night, as they lay together in his bed with the city lights filtering through gauze curtains, Celeste felt something she'd never experienced before, the absolute certainty that she was exactly where she belonged. The media storm would continue, the critics would keep judging their relationship, the business complications would have to be navigated. But here, in Damien's arms, in his sanctuary, surrounded by evidence of the life they could build together, all of that felt manageable. More than manageable, it felt worth fighting for. "No regrets?" Damien asked softly, his fingers trailing through her hair. "None," Celeste replied, and meant it completely. Outside, Manhattan continued its relentless pace, full of ambition and judgment and endless complexity. But inside their sanctuary, there was only love, possibility, and the quiet satisfaction of two people who had chosen each other against all odds. Chapter 9. The Preparation. 2 weeks before the exhibition opening, the Whitmore Gallery had been transformed into something Celeste barely recognized. Professional lighting specialists crawled across scaffolding, installing systems that would make each piece glow with perfect illumination. Florists consulted with event planners about arrangements that would complement rather than compete with the art security experts mapped site, lines and installed discrete cameras to protect the millions of dollars worth of loaned masterpieces. But it was the art itself that took Celeste's breath away, Damien's. Collection pieces had arrived in climate-controlled trucks, each one carefully unwrapped and positioned according to the detailed floor plan they'd spent weeks perfecting. The Monet that had started everything held place of honor in the center of the main room, surrounded by restored works that told stories of survival, recovery, and renewal. "It's like a symphony," Emma breathed, standing beside Celeste as they surveyed the nearly completed exhibition. "Each piece talks to the others." She was right. The flow from room to room created an emotional journey, from damage to hope to healing to celebration. Visitors would experience not just individual artworks, but a narrative about the resilience of beauty in the face of destruction. "The Times critic is coming to the preview," Emma reported, checking her tablet, along with someone from Art Forum, the Museum of Modern Art's acquisitions director, and... She paused dramatically. "The mayor." "The mayor?" Celeste felt a familiar flutter of panic. "Why is the mayor coming?" "Because this has become the cultural event of the season," Damien said, appearing beside them with his own tablet full of RSVPs. "We're at full capacity for opening night, with a waiting list of over 300 people." "That's because of the scandal," Celeste said, voicing her persistent fear. "People are coming to gawk at us, not to see the art." "Some of them, maybe," Damien agreed. "But look at this." He showed her a series of emails from collectors, artists, and art historians, all requesting private viewings and expressing genuine excitement about the exhibition's concept. One message particularly caught her eye, from Dr. Margaret Chen, the world's foremost expert on art restoration. "Ms. Whitmore, your approach to contextualizing restoration work within broader narratives of recovery is revolutionary. I would be honored to include this exhibition in my upcoming book on contemporary restoration practices." "She wants to write about our work," Celeste said in wonder. "Your work," Damien corrected gently. "This vision, this way of presenting art as story rather than object, that's all you." "Celeste." Before she could respond, the gallery's front door chimed, and an unexpected visitor walked in. Victoria Sterling. Celeste felt her stomach drop. Victoria looked as perfectly put together as ever, but there was something different about her. A hardness around her eyes that suggested the broken engagement hadn't been as easy for her as she'd pretended. "Victoria," Damien said, his voice carefully neutral. "I didn't expect to see you here." "I wanted to see what all the fuss was about," Victoria replied, her gaze sweeping over the transformed gallery with professional assessment. "I must admit, it's quite impressive." She moved through the space with the confident stride of someone accustomed to evaluating valuable things, pausing before each piece with the kind of attention that suggested genuine knowledge rather than casual interest. "The Monet is particularly well positioned," she said, stopping in front of the centerpiece. "You've created a conversation between the water lilies and that restored landscape that's quite clever." Despite her personal feelings about Victoria, Celeste found herself responding to the professional appreciation in the other woman's voice. The landscape was damaged by water, like the lilies were painted in water. It seemed appropriate. "Indeed." Victoria turned to face them both, her expression unreadable. "I have a proposition for you." Celeste felt Damien tense beside her. "What kind of proposition?" he asked. "The Sterling Foundation would like to become a patron of this exhibition," Victoria said smoothly. "We're prepared to offer significant funding for educational programming, catalog distribution, and a traveling version that could visit smaller cities across the country." The offer was stunning. Exactly the kind of support that could transform a single exhibition into a movement, bringing their vision of accessible art to communities that rarely saw masterpieces in person. "Why?" Celeste asked suspiciously. Victoria's smile was razor-sharp. "Because it's good business. This exhibition is generating the kind of cultural buzz that the Sterling Foundation wants to be associated with. And because," her voice softened slightly, "I believe good art should be shared widely, regardless of personal feelings." "Personal feelings?" Damien repeated carefully. "Oh, I'm still furious with both of you," Victoria said with casual honesty. "Breaking our engagement was professionally embarrassing and personally insulting. But that doesn't change the fact that what you've created here is genuinely important." She moved closer to Celeste, her voice dropping to a more intimate register. I underestimated you. I thought you were just another pretty face who'd caught Damien's temporary attention. But this? She gestured to the exhibition around them. This shows real vision, real talent. Is this some kind of manipulation? Celeste asked directly. No manipulation, Victoria replied. Just recognition. You're not going anywhere, are you? Despite all my efforts to convince you otherwise, you and Damien are committed to this relationship. We are, Damien said firmly. Then I might as well make peace with reality. I can continue to be bitter and vindictive, or I can be practical and support work that deserves support. Her smile became more genuine. Besides, having the Sterling Foundation associated with your success reflects well on my judgment in former fiancés. The calculation behind the offer was obvious, but that didn't make it less valuable. Victoria Sterling might have personal motives, but she was also offering them resources that could transform their impact from local to national. What are the terms? Celeste asked. No strings attached, Victoria said immediately. No creative control, no approval rights, no input on future projects, just financial support in exchange for association. I need time to think about it, Celeste said. Of course, but don't wait too long. I'd like to announce the partnership at the opening if possible. After Victoria left, Celeste and Damien stood in the transformed gallery, both processing what had just happened. That was unexpected, Emma said, breaking the silence. She's trying to control the narrative, Damien said thoughtfully. If she can't be the woman who married me, she'll be the patron who discovered you. Does it matter? Celeste asked. If her motives are selfish but the result helps us reach more people with this message about art and healing, it matters if you're uncomfortable with it. Celeste walked through the exhibition one more time, seeing it with fresh eyes. These weren't just paintings and photographs arranged in rooms. They were stories of survival, evidence that beautiful things could endure damage and emerge stronger. If Victoria's support could help those stories reach people who needed to hear them, did the source of the funding really matter? I want to accept, she said finally, not because I like Victoria or trust her motives, but because this exhibition deserves to be seen by as many people as possible. Damien nodded slowly. Then we accept, but with clear boundaries and legal protections. Agreed, Celeste said, then paused. Do you think she meant what she said about underestimating me? I think Victoria Sterling never says anything she doesn't mean, Damien replied. She might manipulate the truth, but she doesn't lie outright. If she says you have real talent, she believes it. The validation from someone she considered an enemy was strangely satisfying. Celeste had spent so many years doubting her own abilities, questioning whether her work mattered beyond her small corner of the art world. To have that work recognized by someone as sophisticated and connected as Victoria Sterling felt like a form of vindication. 1 week until opening night, Emma said, consulting her ever-present tablet. Catering is confirmed, security is in place, and the guest list is impressive. She rattled off names that made Celeste's head spin. Museum directors, prominent collectors, art critics whose reviews could make or break careers, and cultural figures whose attendance would signal the exhibition's importance to the broader art world. I think I'm going to be sick, Celeste said. No, you're not, Damien said firmly, taking her hands. You're going to be brilliant. You're going to stand in front of all those people and talk about art the way only you can, with passion and knowledge, and the kind of authenticity that makes people remember why they fell in love with beauty in the first place. What if I freeze up? What if I forget everything I want to say? Then I'll be right there beside you, he said simply. We're partners in this, remember? In everything. The promise in his voice steadied her. Whatever challenges the opening night brought, whatever judgment or criticism or unexpected drama unfolded, they would face it together. Actually, Emma said with a grin, I have something that might help with the nerves. She disappeared into the back office and returned with a bottle of champagne and 3 glasses. A private toast? She said, popping the cork with ceremony. To the woman who taught a billionaire how to see art with his heart, and to the man who gave her the platform to share her gift with the world. To partnerships? Damien added, raising his glass. To magic, Celeste finished, remembering his promise from their first meeting that their collaboration would be magical. As they clinked glasses in the transformed gallery, surrounded by art that told stories of damage and healing, Celeste felt a deep sense of completion. Not the completion of an ending, but of a beginning. The start of something larger and more meaningful than she'd ever dared imagine. The next week would bring challenges, scrutiny and pressure unlike anything she'd experienced. But standing there with Damien and Emma, surrounded by beauty that had survived centuries of damage to tell its story again, she felt ready for whatever came next. After all, the most important restoration work wasn't done on canvas or wood or stone. It was done on hearts and dreams, and the courage to believe that broken things could be made beautiful again. Chapter 10. The opening night arrived with all the fanfare of a major cultural event. And despite Celeste's weeks of preparation, she felt completely unprepared for the reality of seeing her small gallery transformed into the epicenter of Manhattan's art world. By 6 p.m., an hour before the official start time, a red carpet had been rolled out on the sidewalk, photographers lined the entrance, and a small crowd of curious onlookers had gathered across the street to watch the arriving guests. Celeste stood in her office, wearing the stunning midnight blue gown Damien had insisted on buying her, trying to calm her racing heart. "You look incredible," Emma said, appearing in the doorway. She'd traded her usual casual attire for an elegant black cocktail dress that made her look every inch the professional gallery manager she'd become. "I feel like I'm going to throw up," Celeste admitted. "That's perfectly normal. Every artist feels that way before a major opening. I'm not an artist. I'm just someone who fixes damaged paintings." "Stop," Emma said firmly. "You're the woman who created something revolutionary. You took the concept of art restoration and turned it into a meditation on healing and resilience. You made people see beauty in survival. That's not just anything." Before Celeste could respond, there was a soft knock on the door. Damien entered, devastating in a perfectly tailored black tuxedo that made him look like he'd stepped out of a magazine spread. But it was his expression that took her breath away, pure admiration mixed with something deeper and more intimate. "You're the most beautiful woman I've ever seen," he said simply. "You clean up pretty well." "Yourself," she replied, then took a shaky breath. "Are you ready for this?" "I've been ready since the moment I met you," he said, offering her his arm. "Shall we go greet our guests?" The transformation of the gallery was even more stunning at night. Professional lighting made each piece glow with inner radiance, and the carefully planned flow of the exhibition created an atmosphere that was both intimate and grand. But it was the people that truly marked the evening's significance. Celeste recognized faces from art magazines and society pages, but she was surprised by the diversity of the crowd. Yes, there were collectors and critics and cultural luminaries, but there were also young artists, students, and people who looked like they rarely attended such events, but had been drawn by curiosity or the unprecedented media coverage. Ms. Whitmore, a distinguished woman in her 60s, approached, wearing a simple but elegant dress and an expression of genuine interest. "I'm Margaret Chen. We've been corresponding about your restoration work." Dr. Chen, the legendary expert whose approval could legitimize Celeste's career on an international level. "Dr. Chen, I'm so honored you could come." "The honor is mine. What you've done here, contextualizing restoration within narratives of resilience, it's exactly the kind of innovative thinking our field needs." She gestured toward the Monet. "May I ask about your decision to pair the water lilies with the flood-damaged landscape?" For the next 20 minutes, Celeste found herself in deep conversation with one of the world's foremost authorities on her field, discussing technique and philosophy with someone who truly understood both the technical and emotional aspects of restoration work. When Dr. Chen finally moved on to examine other pieces, she left Celeste with words that would echo in her mind for years. "You have the potential to reshape how we think about preservation and meaning. Don't let anyone convince you to think smaller." The evening became a blur of conversations, each one reinforcing that what she and Damien had created was genuinely significant. The mayor spoke eloquently about art's power to heal communities. A prominent collector inquired about purchasing one of Damien's rediscovered photographs for his permanent collection. A representative from the Guggenheim asked about the possibility of a collaborative project, but the most meaningful moment came when Celeste overheard two college students, discussing the exhibition. I never thought about art restoration as being about more than just making old paintings. Look nice, one was saying to the other. But seeing these pieces with their stories, it makes you think about what survives and why it matters. That one over there, her friend replied, pointing to a small portrait Celeste had spent months restoring. The placard says it survived a house fire, 2 floods, and being abandoned in an attic for 50 years, and now it's here. Still beautiful, still telling its story. Kind of makes you think about people the same way, doesn't it? Like maybe damage doesn't have to be the end of the story. Celeste felt tears prick her eyes. This understanding, this connection between art and life, between restoration and resilience, this was what she'd hoped people would discover. Success looks good on you, said a familiar voice behind her. She turned to find Victoria Sterling, resplendent in a designer gown that probably cost more than most people's cars, holding a glass of champagne, and wearing an expression that might actually have been genuine admiration. Victoria, you came. I said I would announce the Sterling Foundation's partnership tonight, didn't I? Victoria's smile was sharp but not unkind. Besides, I wanted to see for myself what all the fuss was about. And I'm impressed. Genuinely impressed. Victoria's gaze swept the crowded gallery. You've created something that matters, Celeste. Not just pretty pictures on walls, but actual meaning. Actual impact! She moved closer, lowering her voice so their conversation wouldn't be overheard. I owe you an apology. When I tried to buy you off, when I told you that men like Damien don't end up with women like you, I was wrong. Not because the social dynamics aren't real, they are, but because I underestimated what you bring to the equation. What do you mean? I mean you're not trying to fit into his world? You're creating your own world and inviting him to be part of it. That's actually quite powerful. Before Celeste could respond, Victoria had moved on to mingle with other guests, leaving her with a strange sense of closure. The woman who had once represented her deepest insecurities had just acknowledged her worth, not as Damien's girlfriend, but as an artist and visionary in her own right. Penny, for your thoughts? Damien appeared at her side, 2 glasses of champagne in hand. Just thinking about how much has changed, Celeste said, accepting the champagne and leaning into his warmth. Are you happy with how it's going? Celeste looked around the gallery, at the animated conversations happening in front of each piece, at the mix of people who might never have encountered each other in any other setting, at the way art was serving as a bridge between different worlds and experiences. I'm more than happy, she said. I'm fulfilled. For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm doing exactly what I was meant to do. Speaking of which, Damien said, there's someone I want you to meet. He led her toward a small group near Damien's photographs, where an elegant woman in her 70s was holding court with several younger people hanging on her every word. Mom, Damien said, interrupting the conversation, I'd like you to properly meet Celeste. Eleanor Ashworth turned, and Celeste found herself face to face with the woman who had sent white roses during the media storm. Up close, she could see where Damien got his compelling presence. Eleanor radiated intelligence. Warmth and strength in equal measure. Celeste, Eleanor said, taking both her hands in a gesture that felt genuinely maternal. I've been so looking forward to this. What you've accomplished here is extraordinary. Thank you, Mrs. Ashworth. And thank you for the flowers. They meant more than you could know. Please call me Eleanor, and I should be thanking you. Eleanor's smile was knowing. I haven't seen Damien this passionate about anything since he gave up photography. You've reminded him who he really is underneath all that business success. He reminds me who I am too, Celeste replied honestly. That's how the best partnerships work, Eleanor said with satisfaction. You bring out each other's authentic selves. As the evening wound down, and the last guests filtered out into the Manhattan night, Celeste found herself alone in the gallery with Damien, Emma, and a handful of staff members cleaning up glasses and straightening artwork. So, Emma said with a grin, how does it feel to be the talk of the New York art world? Surreal, Celeste admitted. 3 months ago I was facing bankruptcy. Tonight I had the director of the Met asking about a permanent position. Are you interested? Damien asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. Maybe someday, Celeste said. But But right now, I'm exactly where I want to be. Here, with you, building something new. She looked around the gallery. Her father's legacy, now transformed into something that honored the past while pointing toward the future. The exhibition would run for 3 months, but the relationships formed tonight, the conversations sparked, the new ways of seeing art and restoration, those would last much longer. What happens now? She asked. Now, Damien said, pulling her close. We start planning the next exhibition. The traveling show Victoria mentioned. The community art center we've been designing. All of it? All of it, he confirmed. Together. As they stood surrounded by art that told stories of survival and renewal, Celeste felt the truth of their own story settling into her bones. They had taken damage, public scrutiny, broken engagements, social disapproval, and transformed it into something beautiful and meaningful. They had proven that magic was real, that love could indeed last forever, and that sometimes the most important restoration work was done not on canvas or wood, but on hearts brave enough to choose each other against all odds. Chapter 11. The Commitment. 6 months after the exhibition opening, Celeste stood in the same place where she'd first met Damien, the marble corridor outside the Metropolitan Museum's Grand Hall. But this time, she wasn't clutching an auction paddle in desperation. She was wearing a simple white dress and holding a bouquet of daisies, waiting for the ceremony that would make their partnership official in every possible way. The past half-year had been a whirlwind of success beyond anything she'd imagined. The Hidden Treasures exhibition had broken attendance records at the Whitmore Gallery, then gone on to tour 12 cities with the Sterling Foundation's support. Dr. Chen had featured their work prominently in her new book, leading to speaking engagements and consulting offers from museums around the world. But more importantly, she and Damien had built something together that was larger than either of them could have created alone. The Ashworth Whitmore Center for Community Art had broken ground 2 months ago in a space that would serve both as a gallery and educational facility. The design incorporated all of Damien's architectural dreams and Celeste's vision of accessible art education. Opening was scheduled for next spring, just after their first wedding anniversary. Nervous? Emma asked, adjusting Celeste's bouquet with the same careful attention she'd once given to insurance papers and exhibition catalogs. Surprisingly, no, Celeste replied, and realized it was true. After all the drama and scrutiny and public attention of the past year, this moment felt quietly right in a way that needed no fanfare. They'd chosen to have a small ceremony in the museum where they'd met, with only immediate family and closest friends in attendance. No media, no society photographers, no guest list designed to impress anyone, just the people who mattered most, celebrating a love story that had begun with art and grown into something that would transform both their lives. "You look radiant," said a familiar voice. Celeste turned to find Eleanor, Ashworth approaching, elegant in a pale blue dress that perfectly suited her refined features. "Eleanor, you look beautiful." "Not as beautiful as you, dear, though I suspect that glow has less to do with the dress and more to do with marrying my son." Eleanor's smile was warm with genuine affection. "Are you ready?" "I've been ready since the moment he told me he loved me," Celeste said honestly. "Good, because he's been pacing in the ceremony room for the past 20 minutes, looking like he might spontaneously combust from impatience." They walked together toward the small room the museum had made available for the ceremony, a space with soaring ceilings and walls lined with Renaissance masterpieces that seemed like the perfect backdrop for a love story that had begun with art. When the doors opened and Celeste saw Damien waiting for her at the front of the room, her heart performed the same flutter it had the first time she'd looked into his storm gray eyes. He was wearing a classic black suit, and his expression when he saw her was one of pure, uncomplicated joy. The ceremony was brief and personal. They'd written their own vows, choosing words that reflected their unique journey together. "Celeste," Damien said, his voice carrying clearly through the small room, "you taught me that the most valuable things aren't the ones we acquire, but the ones we nurture and protect and share. You showed me how to see beauty in survival, magic in restoration, and hope in taking risks worth taking. I promise to spend my life learning from you, supporting your dreams, and finding new ways to make our partnership magical. Damien, Celeste replied, her voice steady despite the tears of joy threatening to overflow. You gave me the courage to step outside my comfort zone and believe that I deserved more than I'd settled for. You showed me that love doesn't diminish when it's shared. It multiplies. I promise to spend my life exploring the world through your eyes, challenging you to grow, and proving every day that some confessions lead to forever. When they kissed as husband and wife, surrounded by art and family and friends who had supported their unconventional romance, Celeste felt the completion of a circle that had begun with her desperate attempt to save her father's gallery and evolved into something neither of them could have planned or predicted. The reception was held in the museum's sculpture garden, transformed for the evening with the same attention to beauty and meaning that had characterized their exhibition. But instead of discussing restoration techniques or acquisition strategies, the conversation flowed around plans for their honeymoon, a art-focused tour of Italian museums and restoration workshops, updates on the community center's construction, and Emma's recent promotion to director of the newly expanded Whitmore Gallery. "So what's next for the power couple of the art world?" asked Dr. Chen, who had become both a mentor and friend over the past months. "More of the same," Celeste said, leaning into Damien's side. "More exhibitions that tell stories, more projects that make art accessible, more adventures together." "Speaking of which," Damien said, reaching into his jacket pocket, "I have a wedding gift for my bride." He handed her a small, elegantly wrapped package. Inside, Celeste found a vintage camera, not new or expensive, but clearly chosen with thought and meaning. "It belonged to Walker Evans," Damien explained. I thought maybe you'd like to try seeing the world through a different kind of lens, and maybe I could join you." The gift was perfect, an invitation to explore new forms of artistic expression together, building on the foundation they'd established while remaining open to new possibilities. "There's one more thing," Damien said, and something in his tone made everyone at their table pay attention. He pulled out his phone and showed Celeste a message that had arrived that morning. The subject line read, "Invitation to establish international residency program. The Venice Biennale Committee wants us to create a permanent restoration and community art program," he explained. "Based on the model we've developed here, but expanded to serve artists and students from around the world." "Venice," Celeste breathed. "Are you serious?" "Dead serious. They're offering us a historic palazzo, unlimited funding, and complete creative control. We could spend part of each year in Italy, working with international artists and developing new approaches to community-based art education." The opportunity was staggering, a chance to take their work to a global stage, to influence how art restoration and community engagement were practiced around the world. It was everything she'd ever dreamed of and more than she'd ever dared hope for. "What do you think?" Damien asked. "I think," Celeste said, looking around at their friends and family, at the museum where their love story had begun, at the man who had transformed her life in ways she was still discovering, "that you were right about one thing from the very beginning." "What's that?" "This collaboration really is magical." As their guests raised glasses in toast after toast to their future, Celeste reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. A year ago, she'd been a lonely restorer facing bankruptcy, convinced that her best days were behind her. Tonight, she was surrounded by love, success, and opportunities she couldn't have imagined. But more than that, she was married to a man who saw her not as someone to rescue or acquire, but as a true partner in building something meaningful together. They had taken their separate damages, his meaningless engagement, her financial struggles, their mutual isolation, and used them as raw materials for creating something beautiful and lasting. Just like the art she restored, they had proven that broken things could be made whole again, that survival could become a form of beauty, and that the most important treasures were the ones worth fighting to preserve. "To magic," Damien said quietly, echoing the toast they'd shared the night before their exhibition opened. "To forever," Celeste replied, remembering the promise implicit in their story's title. As Manhattan sparkled beyond the museum's windows, and their future stretched ahead full of art and adventure and love, Celeste knew that some confessions really could change everything, and that when two people were brave enough to trust in magic, forever was not just possible, but inevitable.